Good morning. And welcome. What an amazing turnout. Thank you all so much for being here this morning. Today is truly a very, very special day for Indianapolis. Before we begin with our speakers, I just wanted to take a few moments to acknowledge and give a special welcome to our current IHPC commissioners and staff. Thank you. Also, we have several past IHPC commissioners that have dedicated their time and talents to the commission in years past, so thank you so much for being here, as well as several members of the Metropolitan Development Commission. And I'd also like to thank our speakers, obviously Mayor Hogsett, and Bill Selm, Dr. Jim Glass, and Marsh Davis. So today is really a two-part celebration. Tonight, the Department of Metropolitan Development will ask the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission to designate both Old City Hall and the former P.R. Mallory Industrial Complex as local historic areas. The designation will provide these historically and architecturally significant structures with the protection that they deserve now and for future generations. This incredible structure that we're in today, Old City Hall, holds a place near and dear to my heart, as I'm sure it does to many of you as well. Old City Hall was designed by Rubish & Hunter, which was one of Indianapolis's most prominent architectural firms. And this structure is one of our city's finest examples of early 20th century civic architecture. Built between 1909 and 1910, this building served the people of Indianapolis for over half of a century, until city offices were moved to the new city-county building in 1963. In just a few minutes, Bill Selm will come up and share the legacy and the importance of this building. And following today's speakers, I encourage you to take a peek around the room at the various boards created by Jordan Ryan, who's a local preservation specialist. I also want to thank Jordan for dedicating your time and talents to this project. Much appreciated. Also tonight, we're going to ask the IHPC to designate the former P.R. Mallory Historic Industrial Complex, which is located just 3 miles east of here along East Washington Street. And though many of us pass this historic site every single day, the significance of the P.R. Mallory industrial site is lost on many. The structures were built in 1921, and while they may not be as ornate as this building, they symbolize Indianapolis's industrial heritage and our city's impact on the field of manufacturing. At its height, P.R. Mallory was one of the largest employers in Indianapolis. And by 1960, P.R. Mallory products could be found on every corner of this earth and even in outer space. Most significantly, P.R. Mallory Company was presented with the Army-Navy E Award, which is the highest honor that you can get, 4 consecutive years in a row during World War II, for their excellence in production of war equipment. And they are probably most noted for inventing and trademarking the Duracell battery. There are thousands of structures in Indianapolis that symbolize a significant piece of our city's history. And I'm excited to bring these 2 before the IHPC tonight to be honored and designated for the part that they played in our city's history. In conjunction with the historic designations, we are celebrating 50 years of the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission in our city. I have to admit, I have a personal admiration for the IHPC, because anybody that knows me and knows me well knows that my first job out of graduate school was serving as the preservation planner for the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. So maybe I should pause and say, thanks for hiring me. I think it worked out okay. But when I was at the IHPC, that's where I truly learned that preservation is not just about saving a building or restoring a structure. It's so much more. It's about revitalizing and rebuilding areas of our city. Much of our downtown and many of our neighborhoods would not look like or be what they are today without the IHPC. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for being a part of this celebration. It is truly an amazing day in our city. And at this time, please help me in welcoming our great mayor, Mayor Joe Hogsett.
You know she's paid, she's paid to say that. But thank you, Emily. Only an Irvingtonian, a dedicated Irvingtonian would say, as most of us pass the P.R. Mallory building every day as we come to... And my dear friend, Susan Williams, I was speaking to Susan just a moment or two ago before the beginning of the program, and she congratulated me because in her mind, my presence here today, in her words, makes me finally and in good faith a committed preservation crazy. She says, "You're now one of the preservation crazies." And I'm proud to be a preservation crazy. You know, Emily said it best. This is truly one of my favorite places in our city as well. In fact, just a month or so ago, we used this very venue to announce what I hope will be comprehensive criminal justice reform in our city. And we have used this venue over the course of the last couple of years for other prominent announcements as well. As we look around, as I was doing during Emily's introduction while she was talking about the history contained here, I was kind of reminded of that old saying, if these walls could talk. Well, that's as true here as anywhere. This place, with all its splendor, with all its history, speaks for itself. If I had my way, this is where I'd come to work as your mayor every morning. That's off the record. It's with great pleasure and pride that we request this building and the P.R. Mallory industrial site to be recognized as historical landmarks by the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. The IHPC is celebrating its 50th birthday, 50 years anniversary. In that time, they've made it their mission to ensure our city's legacy and the preservation of it. I believe it's only fitting that these two new locations join the ranks of many others that have been so integral to our community throughout the passage of time. These designations are very important to Indianapolis and to our people because Old City Hall and the P.R. Mallory building are both so deserving, in my opinion. But the designation as historic landmarks not only ensures their protection for years to come, but it creates the opportunity for appropriate redevelopment, should such come along. Some of the redevelopment opportunities that have arisen around the city, frankly, would not have been possible without the IHPC. For proof of that, just look down the street. The booming success of neighborhoods like Mass Ave, Fountain Square, They only occurred as a result of the IHPC's preservation efforts. The IHPC has made so many contributions to our city throughout the past 50 years, and I trust their great work will continue with these two designations. With them, we are reaffirming our admiration for our community and its legacy. And we do so at the same time promising future generations will have the opportunity to continue to walk in the same footsteps, the same great marble halls as those who for so many years have come before them. That is indeed an important legacy to preserve. And may God bless you all for working to that end. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I'd like to introduce Bill Selm, who is a member of the Metropolitan Development Commission, and he also served as the IHPC historian from 1983 to 1992. Bill?
Thank you, and thanks for being invited. I very much appreciate it because I love coming in this building. I am amazed. I am amazed and elevated every time I step into this building and peer up into the rotunda to the glass dome. What marvelous space there is here with marble, brass railings, and the beautifully molded plaster and the murals. You know, I don't get that feeling in the other building. I just don't. Not at all. And the good part is, coming in, there was no strip search. I am amazed when I am walking or driving past this building and see the play of light and shadow on the classical details carved in that beautiful Indiana limestone. The entablature with its row of dentils and the molding, the fluted Roman Doric engaged columns, the bronze doors, and the monumental steps. I am amazed that this is the City of Indianapolis's first and last purpose-built city hall, which served for only 52 years between 1910 and 1962. Indianapolis was founded by the state legislature in January of 1821 to be, as the name implies, the city of Indiana, the capital of the newly admitted state of Indiana. Indianapolis did not have a municipal government until its incorporation in 1832, 11 years after founding, with a population of over 2,000 people. City government offices were in rented rooms throughout the mile square. City archivist Willard Heiss tracked down at least 11 different locations between 1832 and 1910. That's a lot of moving. That is amazing considering other lesser towns and cities of various sizes already had their own city halls. It's amazing. It was Mayor Charles Buckwalter who had the vision for Indianapolis to have a city hall, befitting the growing city. He originally planned to build it and a civic auditorium on the site of City Market, but not everyone shared that vision. Needless to say, it was the third lawsuit that forced Mayor Buckwalter's retreat, not from the vision, but from the site. This northwest corner of Alabama and Ohio streets contained 3 houses. One of them was the house built by the city's great immigrant entrepreneur, Henry Schnull, who was the father of the wholesale district, another IHPC district. The land was purchased, the houses demolished, the bonds were sold, and a design competition was held in 1908. Five designs were awarded prizes. The first prize was awarded to the local architectural firm of Robisch and Hunter. Their design was chosen over that submitted by Adolf Scherer, who was famous for completing the designs and overseeing the construction of the Indiana State House, finished in 1888. Robisch and Hunter was a new architectural firm, founded only 3 years before the 1908 competition. When the firm was awarded the commission for City Hall, the firm's City Hall design bore a strong resemblance to the recently completed neoclassical Masonic Temple at Illinois and North Streets. This firm went on to design a wide range of buildings of different types and styles. Observe 4 of their buildings on Monument Circle alone: Circle Tower, the Guarantee Building, the Columbia Club, and the iconic Art Deco Circle Tower of 1930. They transformed Monument Circle. I am amazed. We should all be amazed that City Hall is still standing, with most of its character intact after it ceased to function as City Hall. Interest in preserving historic Indianapolis buildings was practically unheard of in 1962, but there were stirrings. Many people expressed their outrage at the loss of the beloved English's Opera House and Hotel on Monument Circle in 1948 to make way for the ultra-modern J.C. Penney's department store. Some mourned the loss of the Marion County Courthouse in 1962, but most just shrugged, since the modern corporate skyscraper, the city-county building, represented progress. Instead of shrugging, one citizen, Mr. Eli Lilly, founded and generously funded Historic Landmarks Foundation of Indiana. I am amazed that thought and effort was put into a second career for this building, instead of merely removing it, an obsolete, old, surplus building. In the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, the Indianapolis Star and the News both ran numerous articles boasting the removal of other old historic buildings described as eyesores. It is also amazing that an article in the Star in 1962 stated that, quote, "The building, the City Hall, is not likely to be wrecked since it is one of the city's graces. Any plan to wreck it is likely to bring a storm of protest. Besides, it probably would be very expensive to take the old fortress apart." Well, that statement sounds very quaint, because very little, if anything, at that time was considered sacred, as everything was considered up for grabs. Mayor Buckwalter laid the cornerstone of the City Hall in 1909, but his successor, Mayor Lou Shank, was the man who was the first occupant of the mayor's office on the second floor. It served the citizens of the city for 52 years. In January of 67, the City Hall was reopened as the Indiana State Museum, which heretofore had been crammed into the basement of the Indiana State House. The renovated City Hall housed the museum and offices of the State Historic Preservation Office, plus the museum work, for 35 years. Since 2002, it has had some temporary uses. We should all be amazed that this great landmark now faces a brighter future in search of its third career, guided by the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. To paraphrase St. Paul and to quote the cornerstone laid by Mayor Buckwalter, "I am myself a citizen of no mean city." And this building, built in 1910, and its preservation in 2017, proves that Indianapolis is no mean city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'd next like to introduce Marsh Davis, who's the president of Indiana Landmarks and a longtime supporter and partner of the IHPC.
Well, Mayor Hogsett, Commission President Brown, Administrator Baker, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. One of the perils of being fourth in a lineup is seeing your remarks suddenly diminish because so much has been said. So let me try to add some new observations here. This commission, this ordinance that was passed in 1967, put Indianapolis into a history of great American cities that had undertaken preservation of their resources. It began in Charleston and a little bit later in New Orleans in the 1930s, where the first commissions of this type were established. And obviously the intent of these commissions was to protect and preserve the great historic landmarks and neighborhoods of those cities. But these people also knew that it was good for business. Preserving the landmarks in Charleston and New Orleans were absolutely essential for the economy, as has been borne out over the decades since. So over the time, since the 1930s, cities and towns across the United States began to enact local preservation commissions. Ours, as you know, was established in 1967. And since that time, I think the positive effects that were witnessed in the other cities have certainly been evidenced here. You look at the 12 districts, historic districts that are now under the aegis of the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission, and the 5 conservation districts. These places are thriving, they're wonderful places to live, and great places to do business. Contrary to all the skeptics who thought that it was going to kill commerce and make it impossible to live, this is where people want to live in our city, and it's thanks to the work of the Historic Preservation Commission and the staff over time to make this a great reality. I'd also like to say a word of praise, since we're looking back now at the 50th anniversary of the IHPC. I'd really like to say a word of praise to the individuals who have served on the commission over time. These are great civic leaders. I see some of them here, Sally Rowland and George Geib and Jim Kinley. It's a slippery slope to start naming names, but I guess I would like for all who have served on the commission, either presently or in the past, to raise your hand and accept our thanks for the great work that you do. This is a selfless task that these people wittingly bring upon themselves. And if you don't believe that this is thankless, tune in to Channel 16 this evening at about 11:30 and see how things are going. Mayor, I hope you have the votes on this becoming a landmark. We shouldn't presume that until it happens, right? Oh, but thank you all. You've done, our city is so much a better place because of the work, the dedication, all volunteer work that you folks do. And also, Mayor, you've got a great staff, as you know, in the Preservation Commission staff. Historic landmarks, historically our name when this started, now Indiana Landmarks. It's been our great privilege to work with the commission and to work. We work really quite well as partners in so many efforts. But I want to acknowledge the great staff at the commission, particularly our friend David Baker, who is celebrating his 30th anniversary as the administrator of the Indianapolis Historic Preservation. I've always found David to be a voice of reason. He is not what some people call a hysterical preservationist. He's a sound mind and a great judgment. It's been always a pleasure to work with David and his staff. One of the wonderful things about today is of course, the potential addition of 2 new landmarks to the 11, which are already the individual listings. We'll now have 13 such designations, and both are without dispute in their merits. But what is all the more remarkable is that they both hold such great potential for reuse. We are thrilled with the announcement late last year that the Purdue Polytechnic High School will be moving into the Mallory building. That is a wonderful accomplishment. It took many layers of work at the city level and with Purdue University, but what a fabulous reuse for that building. And then, of course, we're all waiting patiently for the conversion of this great landmark into what we expect will be a 21-seat boutique hotel in the not-too-distant future. Fabulous reuse for this building that will open it up to the public and have a great infusion of arts. The future looks bright for both of these landmarks. And the important thing is that we think that we've demonstrated now enough in our community that these old buildings that were once, as Bill Selms said, were once considered eyesores and detriments are now jealously protected and desirable places for adaptive use. It's transforming our city, and there's still many places yet to be transformed, as the Mallory will be soon, and hopefully this landmark as well. So thank you all. Congratulations for a stellar 50 years. On to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marsh. And last, but certainly not least, is Dr. James Glass, who's a preservation consultant and a member of the first IHPC staff, and who was also one of my professors in grad school, and I did a graduate assistantship for him. So, Dr. Glass.
Mayor Hogshead, Emily Mack, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to be here at the historic City Hall of Indianapolis and to witness the announcement of its designation as a historic landmark under the protection of the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. And as has already been said, we are also gathered here to mark a milestone, the 50th anniversary of the creation of the Preservation Commission. I was not present at creation, but I was involved in the Commission's history during the 1970s and 1980s. As many of you know, the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission was established to assist in creating a tourist attraction in Lockerbie Square. The commission was supposed to prepare a master plan for a village around the James Whitcomb Riley home in Lockerbie Street, acquire real estate for constructing Victorian-era shops and a bank, and even use eminent domain to obtain sites for 5/6 scale replicas of vanished Hoosier landmarks. The project would have entailed the demolition of many of the 19th century cottages in the neighborhood. Fortunately, I think, business leaders saw too much risk in investing in the tourist attraction, and it didn't happen. In the early 1970s, a back to the city movement of mainly young adults began to buy dilapidated houses in neighborhoods such as Lockerbie and gave hope for a different kind of revitalization based on preservation of the existing historic character. Historic Landmarks Foundation of Indiana, now Indiana Landmarks, the City of Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Garden Club, and the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee joined forces to support the effort. Landmarks sold houses it had already acquired to buyers who would commit to restoring them. The city installed a cobblestone pavement on Lockerbie Street. The Garden Club paid for new Victorian street lights and planted trees. And the Progress Committee based the Indianapolis celebration of the U.S. Bicentennial in 1976 in the Holler House in Lockerbie Square. Now, the administration of Mayor Richard Lugar supported new legislation in the General Assembly in 1975 that expanded the powers of the Preservation Commission. The Commission was now able to designate historic districts and individual landmarks throughout Marion County and to hire a professional staff. I was one of the first 3 staff members, the historian, and I witnessed the resurgence of Lockerbie Square. It became a desirable neighborhood where young couples and empty nesters alike were restoring houses using sweat equity. Jim Rogers, president of the commission, obtained federal funds through the Department of Metropolitan Development to hire staff, and we worked with the Division of Planning and Zoning on the first historic preservation plan for Lockerbie. The plan provided guidelines for the rehabilitation of historic houses and for the design of new dwellings, based on standards that had just been created by the National Park Service. Nearby, Back to the City pioneers began to restore some of the large Italianate and Queen Anne style houses in the Old North Side and Woodruff Place, and workers' cottages in Fletcher Place and Chatham Arch. We assisted with technical assistance to the homeowners and prepared preservation plans for each neighborhood. Later Commission President Sally Rowland, and I want to recognize, Sally, would you be recognized, please? Sally Rowland. Sally helped obtain the support of the administration of Mayor William Hudnut for designating these new areas as historic districts. She was an urban pioneer herself, rehabilitating an 1870s commercial building in Lockerbie for her interior design firm, one of the first businesses to locate in an historic building downtown. Sally. Okay. In rapid succession, Lockerbie Square received its preservation plan in 1978, the Old North Side in 1979, Fletcher Place in 1980, and Chatham Arch in 1982. We also prepared preservation plans like the one for the City Hall today to designate Union Station and the Circle Theater as local landmarks. Now, designation by the Commission provided several advantages to the neighborhoods. First, it stopped the demolition of historic houses. At that point, the Old North Side had lost close to half of its historic houses.
Two, it gave homeowners who were following the preservation guidelines peace of mind that future rehabilitation projects or new construction would also follow the guidelines and not depreciate their property values. And third, as the years passed, it became evident that property values in designated historic areas were increasing more rapidly than in nearby neighborhoods that were not designated. The Commission was also involved in historic preservation issues throughout the city and county. We conducted the first countywide survey of historic properties in 1977 and identified many potential historic districts that have subsequently been listed on the National Register of Historic Places or designated by the Commission. We were involved in the negotiations over the future of the Lockfield Garden Apartments, important as one of the first modern public housing complexes for African Americans in Indianapolis. And we were part of the lengthy discussions that began in 1978 over construction of a downtown retail mall and helped participate in several design studies for locating the mall to conserve historic buildings. Our close partners were Reed Williamson and the staff of Indiana Landmarks, who worked effectively as a nonprofit organization to operate an expanded revolving fund to buy deteriorated buildings in downtown historic neighborhoods and sell them to buyers who would complete the restoration. Reed also recruited the Junior League of Indianapolis to co-manage the revolving fund and conduct much of the historical research needed for the preservation plans. We also worked closely with Richard Gantz and Nancy Long of the Indiana State Historic Preservation Office, and one of my assignments was to nominate the Schnall Rau House on North Meridian Street to the National Register of Historic Places. I also worked with fellow staff member Mary Ellen Gadsky on the nominations to list the Wholesale District and the Columbia Club on the National Register. Our staff directors during my time were Kathy Serena, Jim Kiesling, and Carl Kosebud. Other staff members included Administrative Assistant Ann Mayle, architects Bill Bauer and Luis Morales, architectural historians Michael Crow and Mary Ellen Gadsky, and preservation planner Mary Toshik. Neighborhood leaders and residents whom I recall include Helen and Bobby Small, Caroline and Terry Bradbury, Terry's here today, Judge Roger DeBruler, Diana and Ken Stroud, and Marjorie and Jim Kinley. Marjorie and Jim Kinley are also here today. In the Old North Side, Sue and Bob Beauchamp, Mick and Rita Du Bois, Cindy and Rick Patton, Gail and Pete Pappas, Marion Redstone, and Doctors Larry and Jim Davis. In Fletcher Place, Tom French and John Serber. And in Chatham Arch, Sarge Vischer and Susan Williams, who I think is here today too. And finally, Woodruff Place, there was Roger Benson and Betsy Toy Hall. Congratulations, Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission, on reaching this important milestone.
Thank you, Dr. Glass, and thank you again for joining us today and celebrating with us. Please take a moment before you leave to review the boards around the room, and if you have any questions later, just let David Baker and I know. And then lastly, any previous commissioners, current commissioners, if you could please join the mayor and I for a picture, we'd really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.